I'm Brook Schumann. I'm a mother and a nurse, and I'm involved with Crow Farm. And I was young, I was like 8 to 12 or something, and where there's a lot of things happened, and there's, Kent Conservation started, and they really were working really hard, and then the whole wheelabrator thing happened, which was big for my dad.
Yeah.
And that started Infinity Recycling. And then the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, sent some people over, and they were really grassroots organizers, and they convinced Kent Conservation members to start Chest River Association. And it was kind of, not everybody wanted to do it, but some of them did, and that was Dad. It was really, I think it was the beginning of watershed organizations. And, Chesapeake Bay Foundation really knew that it needed to start being more and more localized. And so they sent people out to talk to us, about what we could do in our own area. It's like during all of that stuff, where all of that was a big piece of what my parents were doing for those years, and so there was a lot of conversation. And I was stuffing envelopes and going out with Dad to collect paper and put signs in people's yards. So all of those things were really there in the forefront of us for us to think about. Yeah.
Matt Nielsen, work for Homestead Farms in Millington, and I also farm on my own organic grain, and I live in Centerville, Maryland. I think I grew up around stacks of currants and overhearing conversations in the background where me and my brother were playing, in the house of this going on and that going on with the organization. And so I was here every summer, and then after high school and college, I kind of just all of a sudden dawned on me I needed to come home, here,
Really?
and I've always felt really strong connection to this place. Growing up just on the water and everything really kind of impacted me really hard and heavy, and just being up in the morning going crabbing and fishing, and from when we were really young, really kind of set the hook really hard,
Yeah.
Scott Budden, owner-operator of Orchard Point Oyster Company, which is located in the Chester River towards Rock Hall, and I live in Chestertown out in Quaker Neck. So I grew up here. I went to Kent County Public Schools, and
that's right.
kind of the same thing. I went away for a while after high school. I went to college in Pennsylvania, and then took a job in D.C. for a number of years, like 6, 7, maybe even around 7 or 8 years actually. So I was there, but I was spending most of my summers, back here. And any break, obviously, I was always here. So I knew that I would probably want to move back to the area eventually. That was the goal. I wanted to come back, have a family here, that kind of thing. I just didn't think it would be quite so quick. But I'm really grateful that it's happened the way it has. I think as far as the CRA board position, not necessarily. I kind of thought, my dad's doing it, and when he wants to hang up the hat, then maybe then they would ask me or something. But I didn't know that, at kind of this earlier point that, they would approach me.
I just started on the board, and so I've had one meeting, and I really didn't know the intense, how intense this organization is really until you start looking at the data and the funding and everything. It's amazing where it's come from, when it was started.
I think to me that the scientific part of it, the numbers are a little bit more ethereal. So being really starting to pay attention to those things is an education for me, definitely.
Yeah.
But,
intimidating? Do you feel
it's totally intimidating. Absolutely. And especially when you're sitting around the table with, the people we're sitting around the table with, who are, some of them are somewhat childhood idols of mine.
Right.
And, and I've been listening to stories about board meetings, for forever. So I have that in my head too. So I feel like I am worried about living up to the expectations of other people on the board.
All of us are, this newer, younger generation that's kind of come back home in a way, or stayed home. And not only are we doing that, but we're kind of taking some of the original industries that have been here forever into the next generation also, with Scott's with the oysters, and he's taking that to the next level of aquaculture, which is light years beyond. I'm farming. I'm doing I work for Luke and Allison Howard at Homestead Farms, which is a very diversified organic farm. And so we're kind of doing things a little bit different there also. Yep. And I think one of the strongest assets, I think, of CRA in a way is its connection to the ag community. I mean, we have big time farmers that are involved in CRA intimately. And I think it's actually a really positive thing. I know there's some, groups that might not think that way, but I think it's really important that you have people that understand that industry, and also are willing to change how or work with the industry to help it move through to a place that's better for everything and also better for the farmer. It's it doesn't have to be it's a net positive for everyone.
Seeing the level of support that came out to go to bat for me, so to speak, at the public events that were about my farm and about my lease. I mean, that was really inspiring, and very grateful for that. And it did lead to optimism that people around here, they care about the river and they care about the environment. And if there's a way to make the water quality better, and to even do it with somebody doing a private venture, why not try it?
Yeah.
So that open-mindedness and that level of support definitely made me optimistic, and it made it an easier choice, I think, when I was asked to join the board, to say yes, because just had developed a lot of contacts with people in the community I didn't know before, or hadn't been familiar with previously. And it's kind of amazing when you start sitting down and talking to people about this one specific thing, which in this case is oyster aquaculture, how much knowledge and how much interest they have across the board for a lot of things that involve the river, not just this.
What we're talking about is basically what Chester River Association has to do, which is change individuals' perceptions of what are you doing on your farm that actually is negatively affecting the water, proving that that's what it is by some data, some science, whatever it is that touches that person.
Yeah.
And that's a hard job. I mean, that's a really hard job there. It's almost like it's an opinion, even though it's not to us.
Yeah.
It's not an opinion, but to them,
Yeah.
it is an opinion. And
That's sweet.
I think traditionally people expect activist organizations or environmental organizations to kind of be more, I don't know what the right word is, but more like into suing you, or what is that? Litigation.
Right.
And I think that's what people are afraid of, and that's what people really don't like. And there are other water organizations that do more of that, and we really don't. That's the last thing we're trying to do. We would much rather find somebody who's doing something that we see as wrong and work with them to figure out what they need to fix. And we have a lot of success stories.
Yeah.
Exactly like that, where we didn't end up having to say, actually, and you're breaking the law.
Yeah.
We could actually work with them to fix the problem and have proved results from that.